asked us if we felt like we wanted to tell this story, which at the time, obviously doing this kind of a story comes with its relevant anxieties due to the illegality of it and due to our responsibilities to the many patients that we're looking after, which is at the time, it's around 10,000 now. At the time was a little less than that, but we have a responsibility to those people to continue to be able to give them care, and a responsibility to our families to try and stay safe, and a responsibility of ourselves as well to try and stay safe. But outside of that, there's so many people that are still falling through the cracks even to this day, through the regulatory pathways, the difficulties that are evident in them. The fact that people are still coming to us shows that there still is these gaps between regulation and reality that need filling. So that needs to be talked about. We need to normalise and rationalise this debate and be sensible voices wherever we can for these people, and reach out to people that haven't heard about this issue and need to hear about this issue in the right way, so that we can continue to have this debate in a way that eventually brings together these large gaps that I'm talking about until we fill them in. And that's really what we're here to do, is just fill that gap until we're no longer needed. And we'll be no longer needed when our phones stop calling, and when compassionate access measures have been put in place that make sure that medical cannabis isn't only legal, but it's accessible, because it's not accessible to people if they can't afford it. It's not compassionate that if someone has to pay for something that they can't afford, that they can't get it, and they can't grow it in their own home, in the safety of their own home. They can't take this plant in a way that helps them to become more well. Well, that's not compassionate access measures. If it's not affordable, it's not accessible. It's not accessible, it may as well stay illegal for many people. So these are the kind of concerns that led us to do this film. And at the time, there was, I think, about 1,000 people had been granted access through the legal pathway.
Less than 500.
Okay, so less than 500, and that was a couple of years after it became legal. So once again, this huge gap between the 100 to 200,000. I think 100,000 is a very conservative estimate, and 200,000 is probably more likely of the amount of people that are using this specifically for medical purposes. And so there's still a long way to go. To this day, right now, there's about 14,000 prescriptions have been handed out, and about 5,000 people have gone back more than once to have that prescription refilled. So there's still this yawning gap, and it begs the question of why that is, and it tells me that there's still something wrong that needs to be addressed, and we hope that this film will help to do that.
Thank you. And Ned, tell us, from your perspective, what you see that this film will be able to achieve.
Well, thanks everyone for coming. By the way, I'm the director, just in case anybody wasn't aware.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Look, as you would have noticed, and much to the chagrin of Luke at times, we don't really delve too much into the exact science of things. And the reason why I chose to do that was because I figured the first step is emotional engagement, and from there, hopefully, people will go out, learn more, research, and evangelise this topic and this issue. So I guess what I hope it will do is just get people emotionally engaged. And I feel like a more scientific didactic is probably for another filmmaker. That's not really where I'm coming from. And hopefully we achieve that tonight. I'm getting a few nods, so that's great. So yeah, obviously, what we would really appreciate is if you go out, tell everyone about this film. It is an independent film, so we don't have a lot of money to advertise. And we just found out from Peter, the owner-manager, this will be playing again on the 20th of October at 5:30 here in the 200-person cinema. So tell all your friends, and it will be online for purchase in the coming months. So yeah, thanks for your support.
Now I've gone completely blank. How do you think the legal framework that's there at the moment is going to be improved? or does it need to be completely scrapped and redone?
I think it needs to be pretty much scrapped and redone. I think the big thing that I'd like to see is, I'd like to see cannabidiol rescheduled so that it's treated more like a supplement or like echinacea or olive leaf extract or one of those products. I still think there needs to be some regulation around THC and how it's given to people, because I think that can be tricky. But yeah, I think cannabidiol itself should just be fucking free.
Yeah.
We should be putting it in our water.
Well, I mean, in a lot of other countries, it is just a food, it is classed as a food supplement and available over the counter, isn't
It's
it?
still quite
Most
expensive
of
though.
Europe and most of America.
Yeah,
you
but
can
it's
get it.
still too expensive.
China.
Like,
Oh, yeah,
it should
exactly.
be like $35 for a 50ml bottle, not $155.
Yeah.
Or if you go to the license providers, the LPs, it's like $300. So
Which continues to compound this issue for a lot of people. It's a
Because
price
there is
that
such
they're
a
paying.
huge difference
Yeah.
in prices between products and between different brands.
And a lot of that is the regulation, so how could it be improved instead of having plants that are grown very easily and readily outdoors in broad acres? So hemp, you're allowed to grow bricks, cloves and seed for seed oil out in a broad acre field in full view of roads. You know, you meant that there's very little control is what I'm saying over the growth of hemp. The minute you want to turn that same hemp plant into medicine, you literally have to put it in a fortress. There has to be armed guards. There's surveillance, CCTV. You know, people that have drones. It's obviously that makes the cost skyrocket and makes it more unaffordable. But it's really the same plant. And also, you know, putting it under cover, you're then depriving that plant of sunlight. All of these things add up to a less than ideal situation for patients at the end of the day. And instead of putting profits first, we should really be putting patients first and making it a lot more accessible. So front-end patient access has been opened up, but it's still very expensive. But the back end of it is still very, very difficult for the legal companies to be able to provide to people. And there are good people out there with legal licenses that want to be able to provide to people. And I think that what we're going to see is companies need to educate themselves to patient needs over time, and prices will come down, I hope, with more competition being introduced. But right now, to this day, we've got 77 odd licenses that are legal, about 34 listed companies. We've got about $1 billion of market cap in those. It's very, very top-heavy businesses that are spending enormous amounts of capital just to keep going, and they're unable to serve patients medicine at an affordable rate, which makes for a very difficult situation all round. And, you know, Little Green Pharma, they're one of the only licensed providers in this country that are growing for patients in this country, because the other 99.9% of the product being served to patients in these countries is being imported from other sources, often without a great deal of control. And there's certainly no organic product available. There's very little whole plant product
except
available.
ours.
Except for people that are providing it on the green or black market. But Little Green Pharma is growing, I think, about 67 plants. That's what they're growing for the entire Australian patient base, and we go through about, you know, half an acre a week at a conservative estimate. You know, so we're looking after in our network of people that surround us. We're looking after about you know, that 10,000 people. So that's double what the federal government scheme is able to do put together. And I don't think that's an ideal situation for patients at the end of the day. I think they need to have far wider access measures in place. And let's hope that happens soon.
Has anybody tried to get a prescription or an authorisation and hasn't been successful in doing so? No one?
I have a girlfriend who's been through cancer, and she spoke to her oncologist about getting it, and he said to her, "I'm sorry, but there is so much red tape, you will be dead before I can get it, before I can get that authorisation."
I'd like everyone to hear from Ingrid now of what she's had to go through in trying to get access, not just for herself, which she'll be able to explain later, but for her son Joseph as well, and what has happened in their situation.
My story began about 17 years ago. I was in my mid-40s and decided to have a child. And everything was going quite well, and he was born, and it was a good birth, everything was fine. And then he had a stroke, which is very rare for children. He hemorrhaged in his brainstem, which was devastating because he lost everything. He lost speech, he lost movement, he lost everything. They virtually told me he would be a vegetable but could think. So it was devastating for me. It didn't turn out like that. I worked out very quickly that he could see, because they told me he was blind as well, but I worked that out pretty quickly. But the first 10 years, there were seizures all the time, and he'd stop breathing, and I'd have to constantly resuscitate him, and my life was non-existent. It was always based on, you know, when was his next seizure, when was the next time he's going to stop breathing, am I going to find him dead? You know, like, your whole life goes, your whole life leaves you. But at 10 years old, it got worse. His seizures got so bad that he was breaking his bones. So they weren't because he was moving around, it was because the seizures were coming in so bad that he was spasming and snapping the bones. So he was breaking his femurs. And there were many a time I would have to hold the bone within the skin and resuscitate him at the same time. So you can see I never slept. I didn't have a life, and he had no existence either. And I started looking on the internet, and I actually looked for me because I had cancer. But then I saw that it worked for seizures as well, but they were always offering CBD then. So through a company called Charlotte's Web, and I spoke to the brothers about it, and they wanted to send it to me in Australia, but I noticed it still had breakthroughs. So I went to Ingrid, and I started asking questions there, and I found someone that was compassionate, that just wanted to help me. And that was 5 years ago, and Joseph hasn't had a seizure since. He is totally seizure free. Quality of life. He didn't have quality of life before that. He gave up. It wasn't an easy life anyway, to end up being in agony and pain all the time and being fed endone and drugs
But
all
you've
the time.
tried to get him a legal supply, and what have you been told?
Well, I can't access it. I'm not allowed to. I went to the neuropediatrician in, I think it's called the Queensland Children's Hospital now. And I said, please help me do this legally. I don't want to do things illegally. And she said, unless he is seizing all day or dying, no, you can't have it. So I have to go back to putting him back in that position, which I will never do. It won't happen. So yeah, no, they're not very compassionate. They only want to work with people that have got one, you know, half dead, and then they'll go, oh yeah, we'll do it. But yeah, so it's been really hard. It's been a hard day. So I'm doing this illegally when I don't want to. I want to do it legally, and my son has quality of life now. He also he takes CBD THCA, which means it's non-active. With the THCA in it, it made all the difference. I did try CBD, and I was still getting breakthroughs. It was only when I introduced the THCA into it that he actually responded, and all the seizures stopped. So THCA is a cold version, not a hot version. When you have THC, then it becomes active and it becomes, you know, you get high. THCA is cold, it's not heated, and it works. And he's not stoned, he's fine, and he actually smiles, he's happy, he enjoys his life now. He did not enjoy his life before that. He still can't talk, he still can't walk, but he's happy. I have to say though, last week we were doing physio, and the two people with me were trying to work out how to stand him up. We had the bar in front, so they tipped his wheelchair down, and he looked at me and smiled, and he put his hands on the bar and stood up. So I don't think I would have got this far if I hadn't been doing what I was doing. A lot of repair in the brain. He didn't have any control over his temperature, so he might be on, I don't know really understand temperature, but you know, he might have been on say 37.8, within 15 minutes he would have been over 40, and the seizures would have kicked on in straight away. he now, we've had a few times his temperature's jumped and no seizures. He lies there like a normal child, which is really unusual for me. You know, it feels odd. And he also, that's becoming less and less, so it's repairing. Everything seems to be repairing itself.
And his bone density, yeah.
Bone density was not good because of lying down all the time. And so they wanted to give him some kind of drug to harden the bones, but they couldn't give me, when I asked them, well, if you're going to harden them like plastic, what happens when he sees? Because something hard splits open a lot easier than something soft and supple. And they said, well, we don't know, because they couldn't give me anything to tell me other children they've done this to other children before. So I refused it. So they actually kicked me out of the hospital because they were I wasn't doing what I was told. And so I started with the CBD. I started putting on CBDs as well as CBD THCA, and within 1 year I had his bone density test up to where it was acceptable.
You mean orally or?
Orally. I do everything. I do syringe. I have a syringe and I give him 4 mil morning and night, and when I was doing the CBD, I've taken that away now because he's fine. You know, he's managing on what he has. Yeah.
4 mils of the black stuff.
No, it's different again. It's an oil. It's not the heavy.
Where does your CBD come from now?
The CBD THCA.
Yeah. You can tell us. We're pirates.
Yeah,
We won't tell anyone.
It's coming from Tony.
Lovely guy.
That's great.
Who was an amazing human being. Like, he's never asked me to pay for anything. He's been just so
That's awesome.
compassionate.
Yeah, good.
You know, he's just, and he has, I don't know how many children, but he must have a lot of children.
Like me.
Must have a lot of children. And I wish there was some way I could return. I don't think he even begins to understand how grateful and how I wish I could do something for him in return, because he not only gave Joseph a quality of life, he gave me one too. I didn't have a life before that. I never slept, I never ate, I was sick all the time. I actually feel, I'll never be normal, but I feel more normal, you know. So it makes a big difference.
And Michael, we heard from you through the movie. Would you like to share some more with the people here?
It's yeah, sure. I look at things a little bit differently. What I mean by that is that, one, getting access in this country is extremely difficult. And if you are unlucky enough to get a script, you're going to get a product that's synthetic, generally. So large corporations aren't going to grow acres of hemp or marijuana, harvest it at the right time, and then properly extract it, so you get whole of plant extract, and then go into distribution. They just want to synthesize it, make it in a laboratory. And the endocannabinoid system, which is in every vertebrae on the planet, requires us to have CBD and THC. We're designed for it. All these receptors are designed for it, not for anything else. And if you start giving yourself a synthetic, it's going to plaque those receptors up, the signaling isn't going to work, you're going to deteriorate. So my concern is not, I think, you know, Australia will follow the rest of the world, Canada, US, and other places, and make it a lot easier to get access. But what are you getting access to? I'm with Nick. This product should be 500 mil in Woolworths, Coles, Aldi, $50 for CBD, right? Everybody should have it. You know, let's produce it in their breast milk. If it's grown properly, there's no toxic level to it. Vitamin C then is a toxic level. It's harmless stuff, you know, totally harmless. Whereas, except you've got very low blood pressure. And THC, of course, needs to go through a chemist, I think. You know, half the people I advise have a psychotropic or psychoactive effect to it.
In saying that, anyone who has taken opioids or benzos,
The relative
I can
harms.
tell you that even the reactions within your own body, I would much rather be on cannabis than high THC cannabis, which is what I need to take for my high pain conditions. I've got an incurable autoimmune disease, which is progressive. It'll get worse, not better. And THC, being an immune modulator, is the only thing that's slowed this down and enabled me to be able to cope with the pain levels that I've got to go through.
And it just needs to be more carefully applied.
Yeah.
And, you know, the good thing about the psychotropic load of THC is it kind of sorts its patients out in terms of who should be taking it really. An overdose of opiates or benzodiazepines looks very different than an overdose of high THC meds. You green out, you're not going to feel very pleasant. You're hardly saying, oh good, give me more of that. People are going, oh this is terrible, I feel horrible, I don't want to do this again. People that take a lot of opiates generally don't feel like that. They generally feel like taking more. And so it's a plant that kind of sorts out its own patient base, and there's varying levels of THC and CBD in various strains. And then
Which is why we should have access to different strains.
Absolutely.
Not just a standardised product.
Exactly. And that is one of the issues at the moment, is that if a doctor wants to try different products, they really can't. They've got a limited access. A patient has to come back and get a different script for every time they want to change anything about that. As we know, there's so many different cofactors in this plant that come together to make it useful or not for patients, that we need to have really broad access to this. And it should be, you know, I personally think that THC needs some regulation, some care attached to it, but it doesn't mean it should be unavailable.
No.
And the isolates, as you pointed out, we don't know what to do with them in our body system. We've evolved with this plant over a long period of time. The endocannabinoid system does know what to do, or our bodies in general know what to do with cannabis. It's been around for a long time, and so have we. But we don't really know what these isolates are going to do. And so we should apply a lot of research into what these isolates do, and if there's going to be a pharmaceutical scheme of this being there, and that suits some people to go and seek it out, so be it. That's up to patients, in my view. I'm not saying that I personally agree with it or that it will be useful. And in fact, the Lambda Initiative that was gifted $35 million, they share information with us, and they're doing a lot of trials exclusively on these isolates. And what they're giving us as information against the information that we get from the patients that we work with is that they're using between 10 and 40 times more of these isolates to get anywhere near the same response, say as an anxiolytic. And what we certainly know is when you isolate THC and you use it by itself, and I've done this on myself several times, it's a pretty unpleasant experience using isolated THC. It's horribly dysphoric. And for me it was disturbing. I've got a high tolerance to these things. So I think, what are we giving to these patients who are just fresh off the street? It's not, you know, we need a combination. This plant has natural balances in it that we can intelligently apply if we are able to. And hopefully, once again, that will happen with time.
I truly looked at somebody's label from New South Wales. They got a script, and it's a synthetic CBD THC combination. There she discovers things like antifreeze, things you don't want to put in your body.
Yeah. We've had some patients come in with breaking out with skin rashes from isolates.
You hear ridiculous things. People say, oh, I tried that and I got sick. People, wait a minute. What did you try? You try a broad spectrum plant extract, which Luke has painstakingly found the best of the world, and at great expense and great risk. He's found the best. I researched what would be the best. And where do I get it from? My first stop, I went to a gentleman, Niven, we know very well. I said, where can I get this? He said, oh, I'll pass on your details to this guy called Luke. And we talked, and of course it was the right company that makes it correctly that you brought in. I mean, people can bring in crap, people they can create it here, and it's not going to be effective.
And there's a lot of crap coming into the country.
Yeah, there is.
Well,
We're like a
And
dumping ground for
that's
it.
a cost thing, right?
Yeah.
A lot of companies are trying to buy low and sell high.
Well,
But I would like to say that I think that there is going to, that is going to change. You know, that patients will eventually educate doctors, doctors will listen to their patients, doctors have, you know, the requisite training to be able to do this if they get given the right tools to do it. And I've met a lot of doctors who are very compassionate individuals that want to be doing the right thing, but they're hampered by the regulations too. There's of course exceptions to that as well, but you know, in a general sense here, there is, I think, a bit of an unstoppable wave of this that will eventually sweep these issues before it. What we need to think about is these compassionate access measures and amnesty measures for right now for all of these people that are still falling through the cracks, because it isn't good enough to wait for the research outcomes for 3 years down the track.
Yep.
For
Because
you were going
presently,
through. We just need to normalise this right now.
I got some information through the Queensland Parliamentary Library. 92% of the people who are being arrested for cannabis offences in the 2018 and 2017-2018 period, 92% were patients, carers or personal users. Of that 92%, and that's a ridiculous percentage of people who are being charged with cannabis offences. Of that 92%, 29% and the highest rate in Australia was Queensland. We need government to start to realise that they can't keep punishing vulnerable people with these laws. I mean, the Drugs Misuse Act in Queensland, for instance, when that was brought in 1987, you can check it in Hansard. That was specifically designed to target traffickers, not personal users, and that's what it's been used against patients, carers, and the people who are using themselves.
And another factor here, just to take into consideration, is the driving laws at the moment.
Yes.
So even if you get a legal script, if you do the right thing, you get a legal script, you can afford it. The minute you get behind the wheel of your car, you're a criminal, right? So you can take as many benzos or opiates, go and have a couple of drinks, and get behind the wheel of your car. And you're not a criminal. You've got this as a script, or it's legal. But if you do this with cannabis, then you're still not. So once again, we're not really there yet, and there needs to be changes made. We have, unfortunately, different regulatory bodies that handle different areas of the law, and the left hand sometimes doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and it's going to take time to catch up. And let's hope it happens sooner rather than later.
One way we can get it to happen sooner is for everybody to start contacting their politicians, their state and federal politicians, and letting them know that what is in place at the present time is just not good enough, it's just not working.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing is, like, so many people want it to be legalised, but nobody's putting their hand up. Everyone's waiting for someone else to do it, and this is what I notice. And I try so hard. I go to my members of parliament, I talk to everyone about it. I've gone to Canberra, but I'm seeing everyone sitting back thinking, "I'll let them do it," and it's going. That's why it's not going anywhere. That's why we're still stuck in the same place, because nobody wants to put their hand up.
Australians are so complacent.
Yeah, and it's really hard for me because I know I could have someone knock on my door. I've done interviews, I've been on, I've done Channel 7 interviews, and I know that I could get a knock on my door, you know, but I'm willing to do that. But it's so hard watching everyone sit back and you know, come to me and go, "Ingrid, help me, please help us. Somebody's sick in their family, or they're sick," and I direct them, because obviously I don't have anything to offer them. But I'm thinking, none of you help me, none of you put your hand up, none of you go to the rallies, nobody goes anywhere, and that's why we're not getting anywhere. That's why we're not getting anywhere, because nobody wants to expose themselves.
Do you think though that the talk about it is super like rationalised though? Like people aren't actually talking about it enough. That's why people aren't going to the rallies and things. They're scared of putting things on social media. They're like, because of the threats that, like, you know, it's super scary knowing that, you know,
It's
your
super scary for me too.
Oh, absolutely,
But I still go. I've been
Totally,
interviewed twice by Channel 7.
Yeah.
It's scary for me
Yeah.
too. But I want this because
Yeah.
I know what it did for my son. I don't want to sit there and know something that was so important that changed my son's life and has given me a son, and he hasn't passed away. Why do I want to hide that? Why, when I could help other women in the same position as me, families?
Do petitions work? You know, like the ones you often, I mean, I get them
Well,
constantly.
we try. We try.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I constantly get them for, you know, the turtles and the wombats and the, you know, well, if you put something, and I don't know how to do it, but if you put something like that in and we all sent that out to all of our contacts, who send it to contacts, you know, you get the signatures, it says sign here.
I think we need to ask for a referendum. We need to have
We
a
did,
vote.
we requested a plebiscite before the last federal election, and we were knocked back by Greg Hunt. But I have been working with some politicians behind the scenes, and in the next few weeks we'll be having a full legalisation petition coming out. That will be a federal petition. And if we can get the numbers of people signing that, these politicians in the background, who I won't mention at this stage, have said that they will do everything they can to push that through and get it enacted.
Is that a parliamentary petition?
It will be a federal parliamentary
Right.
petition, yes.
Cool.
Okay, so if you have a look on the MCUA website in the next, or on Facebook, in the next probably 4 to 5 weeks, that it's being written as we speak.
Hey, just quickly, there's a model apparently that's been testing CBD oil available in Australia. Do you know about that?
Well, that's something that we need to have. You know, a lot of the issues within the black or green market.
Apparently there's some people I heard, I don't know, I haven't got it found it, but they were actually accepting donations of all CBD oil without any questions asked.
Oh,
and they were
sorry.
testing,
Okay,
like,
so this is a
all the
Lambert
stuff.
initiative. So this it was meant to be patients were allowed to have their stuff tested by the Lambert initiative to check for what was working, but that was really based more on cannabinoid content and terpene profiles than it was on things like mycological issues, other bacterial issues, fungus, fungicides, pesticides, heavy metals. So there are, you know, we're lucky enough to know some people that have a lab that tests for us, and good on them. I mean, they're risking their license that they've spent several $1 million to set up to help us, and you know, we really applaud that. There is a lot of good people out there doing stuff behind the scenes.
What is it?
But every day,
They test for all of those things I just mentioned. Yeah.
every
but it is
day
very
people
expensive.
don't have access
Every
to.
day people
yeah.
don't have access to
Yeah.
that. Nearly, a couple of the other people we know send to overseas. That's difficult because then you're breaking other, you know, issues of import-export
Yeah.
laws. And there are some rudimentary testings happening and available, but most people just don't have access. The carers don't have access, and certainly not the patients.
No.
You know, so there are those of us that are lucky enough to be able to get product that has GMP certification, that has all of this standardised procedures of testing, and then the part that we don't have of that, say the high THC component, we can get tested at these labs, but that's not across the board, and that's another measure that we would like to see within compassionate measures and amnesty measures given immediately, so that the issues that that various government bodies have rightly said there are with the black market of this lack of testing, well, we would like to see them implement measures that would allay those fears.
And the
take care
same,
of those issues.
and the license providers should be going through the same tests as well, because I think that if you tested the products that we supply people, and you tested the products that they're supplying people, ours would be a far more superior product. And they're going around telling everyone that we're selling garbage. So, sum them up.
And so you've probably you've seen a lot of people you've helped with these.
I've got-
Some people haven't been helped, but is there a way to find out more about the cross spectrum of what has helped and what, like, you guys obviously have a fair bit of information that most people.
Yeah, and we share it too. I
Is
mean,
there a way we can find, like?
yeah, I can give you a card, you can contact me and I can share information with you.
There's also additional interviews that didn't make it into the actual film that's on our website, greenlightmovie.com, if you want to see some more. Veteran with PTSD, and what else did we have there? No, we didn't include that one.
Pancreatic cancer.
Pancreatic cancer and a few others, so you can check those ones out. Unfortunately, we couldn't include every single one. They're all amazing, but yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
But
Doing
I have
7
been
minutes.
told that we've got to be out of here by 6:30 because there's
Yeah.
another showing of another film on in 15 minutes. So I'd like to thank everybody